This is the RACER H2O podcast.
It's time to drop that flag!
Go! Come on. Right here, go get him! Cut it tight. Be on the tractor, baby! Bring it home!
And now here's your host.
Rewind battle for the lead, shoulder to shoulder, going into turn one. Rips that boot around!
Jared Rosberg.
Yeah, what's up, troops? It's your old pal, Jared. Welcome to the RACER H2O podcast. Hey, let me tell you something, guys. No bad news this week. No news of any new cancellations. Yeah, I know. The summer is young. Things are just getting started. Things are still very fluid, no pun intended, with the watercraft racing world and this crazy COVID-19 virus that just won't get out of the way. Somebody throw the blue flag with the yellow stripe at this thing. Tell it to get out of the way. Black flag it. Send it back to the pits. Either way, RACER H2O podcast continues. We've got a rare doubleheader for you this week, fans. Two types of racing were on the water this week. We're going to devote two different podcasts. The first one this week coming up, we've got Robert Sand, the race director of Pro Watercross. Jet ski racing on the Gulf of Mexico this past weekend, fans. Panama City Beach, Florida, rocking and rolling. We'll talk to Robert and get all the scoop from that. Coming up in the next podcast, we catch up with Rick Miller. The Hydros were on the water, and Rick Miller from the NBRA will be our guest on the next podcast, talking about this past weekend's race in Grove, Oklahoma. So this week, we're going to talk to Robert Sand, and we'll have him coming up in just 15 seconds, fans. Don't move. This is the RACER H2O podcast.
Get up-to-the-minute watercraft racing news and fantastic bonus content by joining RACER H2O on social media.
Links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube pages are easy to find at racerh2o.com.
You're listening to the RACER H2O podcast.
Fans, welcome back to the podcast. The Gulf of Mexico in beautiful Panama City Beach, Florida was the stage for Pro Watercross's opening round. They finally got to put skis on the water, and they did not disappoint. Huge crowd on hand in Florida. And I'm joined now by Robert Sand, the race director for Pro Watercross. And Robert, you guys were racing at Panama City Beach this weekend down in Florida on the Gulf of Mexico. Man, what I saw on Ricky Ignacio's live stream, man, what a beautiful event. What a beautiful sight. What a beautiful weekend for racing, huh?
Absolutely. This venue is my first year here. And, of course, we couldn't come last year because they had the hurricane that not allowed us to do that. But let me tell you, the sugar sand, white beaches, turquoise water. Where we're located this year was right in front of Sharky's, which is a bar and grill. And just the location was just phenomenal.
Well, not only was the location phenomenal for racing, it was great for the crowds, and I saw huge crowds there. Lots of teams, a lot of build-up energy because everybody's been locked down, hasn't been able to do anything. But, you know, we're still operating under the specter of COVID-19. How was the social distancing working out with all those people there, all the teams? Was everybody being safe?
I'll be honest with you. Being I'm an older guy, I'm a little concerned. But I think everybody stood within their distance, but it was mainly a lot of the groups together. I know I kept my distance from people if I could, but we had plenty of hand sanitizer everywhere. I think it's come down to, and a lot of us think, and even my opinion is, have common sense. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands, and here we are in the beautiful fresh air and the sun and everything else. So it was pretty good, and I was impressed. But Florida has opened up, and not very many maps around here.
Well, let's move the discussion to out onto the water. Now, one thing that I noticed, we covered Hydrocross Nationals last year on our TV coverage, and with them they have the challenge of the Joker buoy. You guys have an interesting challenge out on the water where you actually split the course in the final turns of the course, where the riders could take one of two different tracks on the course, for lack of a better term. Could you explain that to the fans that maybe aren't familiar with Pro Watercross?
Sure. Well, there's various different tracks that could be set according to your location, water conditions, and of course, how many racers, that we're going to, fill the line. So in the beginning of the race, in this case, being that it's a surf race and we have the obstacle of the waves that come in, we end up having the people go around a one-gate start, which brings them around, our big sweeper. And then when they come to our double buoy, that is a decision point for either for you to take the inside or an outside. And for two reasons, of course. If you have a slower rider in front of you, you're just going to take opposite of what they do. It just gives options to the racers. Normally, a lot of times I find that split tracks, you'll see them identical, but just come off and then, you chicane through and come out the straight. This one here, Randy, Course Marshal Randy is back on board this year with me. I got with him and we said, I always like to throw a different wrench into the track. I want to change the track all the time. I want challenge areas. I want tight sections. I want open sections. I want fast. I want slow, everything. And we made it a little bit different. So we had the outside was only 3 buoys. So you were a lot faster. You can almost keep it full throttle and come around that to the back front straight. And then also on the inside, which was more of the chicane to make it a little bit more technical. So it gave that option to the racer to go either in or out.
Well, one of the many things I really like about watercraft racing, whether it's jet skis or whether it's the hydroplanes or whatever, the courses always change. It's not like stock car racing where you go to Talladega, it's the same track every day, every year. I mean, the track changes as far as rubber build up throughout the day, but you don't have to worry about turn 3 disappearing. You don't have to worry about a buoy dropping somewhere, and you have to go around and do all kinds of different things. So it's one of the cool things about watercraft racing. Now, one thing I also noticed about this weekend's event in Florida was that there were nearly 24 classes racing out there. Pro Watercross really showed up with a lot of different classes of racing. Out of the weekend, what would you say was the most exciting of all of the classes you got to see?
Well, you know what, being an older guy and everything, and in the sport since the early '80s, I just love watching the juniors. Yesterday we had Revan Harris and Ryder I can't pronounce his last name, but Ryder Winterbaum out of South Dakota. And let me tell you, these two guys were just going at it, one would go inside, one would go outside. I mean, I was sitting on top just with a smile on my face. It was just so exciting to see. But, the juniors of all juniors, I could go back to, from the Chambers to, I just watched a film this morning of little Mac on a boat that they posted, which was cool. And then, of course, the Farthings that are both out here. And now we have Talon, and Devin's already been into it, but Talon just jumped into it. So I just love watching the young kids get into it because they really are the future of the sport.
When we covered motocross racing, one of the best classes, and anybody that handles AMA stuff, especially at the junior level, the 125Cs. I mean, we always said that they should have been 125K for Kamikaze. I mean, those kids were just on the cusp of making a decision of where they were going to go with their careers, and they were letting it all hang out. So it seems like the younger the rider, the better the race sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing. Of course, if I go back to when I had my race team in the 80s and I had my racers and stuff, and of course there was an age limit. Of course, there were probably a few people in there that were younger, as we know. But you know what? I'm telling you, I'm watching these 9, 10, 11-year-old kids that are just unbelievable. I mean, they've probably been riding jet skis since they were probably 2 years old, 3 years old. And it's just amazing to see how they flow. I will tell you this, it's been, I've been watching these racers and the improvement that they make. And then, they follow the direction. They hold their lines. Their sportsmanship is incredible. It's kind of like sometimes when we talk up on the tower, it's like, man, the adults should be looking at these juniors because they really are doing it the right way.
Yeah, I was going to say they're probably watching the adults, but we all know that sometimes adults can act a lot like children out there, don't they?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's something we can never change. But just it's very refreshing to see the new group of riders that are coming in. Definitely refreshing.
Well, let's talk about some of the more experienced riders out there. I mean, and go into some of the classes. Man, Brian Baldwin was on fire this weekend in the box stock. He just absolutely dominated. Grabbed first in all 3 of his motos. What was it like to see a rider like Brian Baldwin out there on the water? How do you do against everybody else?
Well, we have great runabout riders, but the two racers that stand out that usually are neck and neck with each other is Troy Schneider and Brian Baldwin. And these two guys go back and forth, and it is exciting, a little scary at times for me, but it is exciting racing, and they really put on a good show. And being adversaries or whatever it might be, it just puts on a great show on the road, on the water. And, and that's very important because, we're there anyway. The families are there anyway, so we're all here watching it. But if we can give a great show to the spectators, and like you said, there were thousands of people up and down this beach here watching the race. I mean, it was actually, I saw it in the local newspaper that they said we were coming. So we need to put a good show on for the people, because I also think of the sport, not only can I get 25 more racers to the race next week, I need spectators. I want us, and here's a really good thing is this year, all of the pro watercross tours are being filmed by CBS. So this every single race this year will be on the CBS prime time. They said we got a great slot for it. I know in previous years it was only Naples, our World Championships. So it's opening up. It's allowing these racers to show their sponsors, look, I've got coverage here to show you, so your investment is not going to go to waste. And every year is just getting better and better. Unfortunately, COVID-19 kind of put a big damper into us this year. But I am just ecstatic that AJ Handler and Jennifer kept looking forward and said, we're going to put this race on unless they say we can't. And we were here and we did it.
Well, we're speaking with Robert Sand, the race director for Pro Watercross. And, Robert, you mentioned a little bit before about the family atmosphere. You brought up some names. You brought up the Farthings. Sam Nemi and Sammy are another one. We know the Skelets are out there. Big family atmosphere. And one family that really lit it up this weekend in the Ski GP class, well, they're not even from the United States. They're a couple of South Africans, the Matzoris family. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
True. Well, we have I'm very proud to have the support of the Matzoris brothers. They come out to our races. It's not a close drive to go from Arizona to Florida. They come out. Let's face it, Dustin, it's great watching the two brothers race, and they definitely have respect for each other. I see one comes into a turn because they end up in the front there a lot of times, and they do have respect for each other. But, I know now they are residents of Arizona and part of that, but just to have that international feel of them, even though I kind of consider them locals now. And then, also Aaron Gawicki, who came from Arizona as well. He had a really good showing out there as well. But it's great when we can have an international feel. And for me, when I do go international, and we'll have 20 different countries representing, if not more, at some of these events, it just really makes it's just more interesting instead of just, like the old regional racing, you just had your people that were within your area and that was it. So it does make it a lot more exciting too.
Yeah, Dustin and his brother Tyron racing the Ski GP class. Dustin won the overall. He was first in Moto 1 and Moto 3, grabbed third in Moto 2 behind his brother who won in Moto 2, but Dustin grabbed the overall win in Ski GP. And, we say it all the time in all kinds of racing. It's consistency that wins. And if you look at the sports stock from this weekend, Robert, Ken Waddle was the picture of consistency because he won the overall without winning a single moto. He went 2, 2, and 3. Bobby Cardone, who we all know from his web show, won the first moto, but he finished 5th in the second and 10th in the third. Christopher Landis was doing well in the second moto where he won, but he finished 10th in the first one, grabbed a second in the third. All these numbers flying around, I understand, fans, but, there's 3 motos, and it's how you do on all 3. And Ken Waddle won the sports stock without winning a single moto. He went 2, 2, 3.
Yep, consistency is what really happens, and other races that for the biggest race I do is King's Cup, 4 motos. So you have you can have one bad moto, and we've seen this too with the Pro GP and Ski GP and stuff. Sometimes you'll have maybe one bad moto, but then make up great on the next 3 and get consistent and get yourself right back up at the podium. So definitely consistency is huge. I did notice, speaking about consistency and knowing where you are in points when you get into a Moto 3, I was watching one of the races, and there's a sport class boat, and Devin Farthing had it locked up. And he was just, I'm just going to stay in second and just cruise and save my boat and not chase somebody. I don't have to, and I'm still going to win. Mm-hmm. So that whole, not only the consistency, but knowing what you need to do and how to finish to get your results is big too. Because unfortunately, we saw, in one of the sport GP classes, we had the Hurricane Con out there from the Team Faith, Jimmy Wilson on that boat. I do believe it was the second moto where they lost the cylinder because it never came back out again. So I think it was probably just inner compression. But anything could happen at any time. And that's why that consistency is really important, as you said.
Well, your next race is on Lake Hartwell in Georgia. Most of your riders, as I look, you have riders from all over, but the largest chunk of PWC riders are from the Southeast. So it shouldn't be too hard to carry that momentum to the next race. And I would expect to see a pretty good turnout in Georgia as well, yes? Yeah,
last year, I believe we had a total of 6 or 7 races. I remember, and Lake Hartwell was our biggest race. When the RACER showed up, and the Friday registration and the Saturday registration. So we really don't know until right after Saturday exactly how many people we have, but it tends to be our biggest race. So I am really anticipating a really good showing. I know people want to race. It's a little bit more west, so hopefully we can pick up a few more people. I know we got the Texas Vintage crew going to be coming out most likely. A couple of good old boys vintage races are going to come out who live close, which we'll have them up in the tower and do some, have the Kurt and Rick do some interviews with them. But like you said, with everybody staying home, just wanting to get out, I'm hoping now it'll be a couple more weeks. People have been able to get back and work and get things going so we can have a really good showing there. And I will be setting up one heck of a track there as well. That'll be very nice.
Well, we're speaking again with Robert Sand, the race director for Pro Watercross. And Robert, after that, I think it's a little bit of a challenge. You guys got to go all the way up north to Racine, Wisconsin in early August. Had a great turnout in the Southeast. Got a lot of riders there. That's where they're from. Now they got to hit the road, and man, trust me, that is not an easy trip all the way up to Wisconsin. What are you guys going to do to try to pull more riders? Do you have a local pool up there you can pull from, or how are you going to get the guys to come all the way up north?
Well, locally, when last year at Racine, I did notice the local people and within the vicinity. But if racing is in your blood, you do what you do to get there. Again, I had my own team back in the mid-'80s and '90s, and we drove, and we went to every race throughout the United States. It was anybody who's a personal watercraft enthusiast, it hooks you, and it just takes you there. Once again, now, the nice thing about Racine I like is the water temperature is a little bit cooler. It's a little, being more north, so it is a little bit of a change because, I got my little sunburn going on from here this weekend, and it's, times with the humidity and the heat, it does get a little bit there. But I'm sure Hartwell might be a little scorcher like it was last year, but at the end of the day, it's just a great time, and that passion we all have for the sport is what really makes it. So I think the main thing is in what myself and my wonderful staff, we work so hard to give the racers the best race that we can and to constantly improve. And I'm all ears. I like to listen to people who tell me I might not do what you say, but it will come in and we'll process it and discuss it and talk about it, because at the end of the day, the racer is the customer. And without the racer, we're at home. So, we don't want to be a race series that just does what we do. We don't listen, and if you don't like it, you don't have to show up. That is not our attitude. We want every racer to come and have a great time and just keep growing the sport.
Well, operating a national touring series during a global pandemic, just the problems are just magnified and intensified because now you've got to deal with COVID-19 and you have to deal with rules with COVID-19 across the board. Each state is different, and Wisconsin is going through its own thing. So here's hoping that they're able to get that all cleared up and you guys are able to race safely in Wisconsin in early August. But Pro Watercross's next event, fans, is June 27th and 28th. They're at Lake Hartwell in Livonia, Georgia, the lovely metropolis of Livonia, Georgia. They're celebrating 25 years of racing. Fans of Pro Watercross are doing something right. You can learn all about them at prowatercross.org. You can see all of the results from all of the races in Panama City Beach this past weekend at the website. And we have been speaking with Robert Sand, the race director of Pro Watercross. Robert, thank you so much for your time. Get back to vacation with your family, man. Have some fun.
Thank you very much. It was great talking with you.
Well, fans, that's going to wrap things up for podcast number 1 of this week's doubleheader. Coming up tomorrow, make sure you check back on iTunes. Make sure you check back on Google Podcasts, YouTube, everywhere you're enjoying this podcast. We will have Rick Miller from the National Boat Racing Association. We're talking about the hydro race that happened in Grove, Oklahoma this past weekend. Until then, fans, I'm your old pal, Jared. Thanks for listening. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, follow all those great social media things. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on the RACER H2O podcast.